The NATO alliance wasn't just a military pact. It was democracy's greatest experiment in collective defense. In April 1949, as the Berlin Airlift proved democratic resilience, 12 free nations faced a crucial question. Could parliamentary democracies unite permanently against Soviet expansion without sacrificing their sovereignty? This moment revealed the fundamental strength of democratic cooperation. While Stalin commanded satellite states through fear and force, Western democracies chose voluntary alliance through negotiated treaty. The North Atlantic Treaty didn't just create military obligations, it established that democratic nations could coordinate defense while preserving individual freedoms. Harry Truman, Clement Attlee, and other democratic leaders understood what authoritarian regimes could never comprehend. Free societies grow stronger through partnership, not domination. NATO became proof that when democracies unite against tyranny, they create something more powerful than any dictatorship. A voluntary alliance of free peoples defending shared values.
The Berlin blockade had ended in May 1949, but Stalin's message was clear. The Soviet Union would use any means necessary to expand communist control. Democratic leaders across the Atlantic recognized that individual nations, no matter how powerful, couldn't match the coordinated threat of international communism. Unlike authoritarian alliances built on coercion, NATO emerged from democratic debate and parliamentary approval. President Truman consulted Congress extensively. British Prime Minister Clement Attlee faced vigorous House of Commons discussions. French, Canadian, and other democratic leaders subjected the treaty to public scrutiny that no Soviet satellite ever experienced. This democratic process took months of negotiation, something Stalin's rubber stamp alliances never required. But this deliberation created something far stronger: genuine commitment based on shared values rather than imposed obligations. The original 12 founding members, United States, Britain, France, Canada, Italy, Portugal, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, represented every major tradition of democratic governance. Parliamentary monarchies joined federal republics. Catholic nations allied with Protestant countries. What united them wasn't ideology or force, but commitment to democratic principles.
NATO's formation showcased the superiority of democratic decision-making over authoritarian command structures. While Stalin could order satellite nations into the Warsaw Pact through threats and puppet governments, NATO required genuine democratic consent from sovereign peoples. Consider the contrast. Stalin's Eastern European allies had no choice in their alliance membership. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and others were forced into Soviet orbit through rigged elections, political purges, and military occupation. Their alliance represented conquest disguised as cooperation. NATO members, conversely, chose alliance through democratic processes. The U.S. Senate ratified the treaty 82-13 after extensive debate. The British Parliament examined every clause. French legislators scrutinized obligations and benefits. Each democracy approached NATO membership as equals, not as subordinates to a dominant power. General Dwight Eisenhower, NATO's first supreme Allied commander, embodied democratic military leadership. Unlike Soviet generals who answered only to Stalin's whims, Eisenhower coordinated with multiple democratic governments, balanced competing national interests, and maintained accountability to elected civilian leaders.
NATO's success stemmed from recognizing that military alliance required economic partnership. The Marshall Plan, launched alongside NATO negotiations, proved that democratic nations could coordinate economic recovery while maintaining political independence. Stalin's economic cooperation involved resource extraction from satellite states to benefit the Soviet Union. East European countries were forced to sell raw materials cheaply to Moscow, while buying expensive Soviet-manufactured goods. This colonial relationship weakened Warsaw Pact members economically, while strengthening Soviet control. NATO nations chose mutual economic benefit over exploitation. The Marshall Plan distributed American aid based on demonstrated need and democratic commitment, not political subservience. Recipients maintained economic sovereignty while accepting assistance.
Today's challenges from Putin's Russia, Xi's China, and other authoritarian regimes follow Stalin's playbook: divide democratic nations, exploit temporary disagreements, and present authoritarianism as more efficient than democratic cooperation. NATO's expansion eastward after the Cold War proved democracy's attractive power. Former Warsaw Pact members, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Baltic states, chose NATO membership not from American pressure, but from recognition that democratic alliance offered security, prosperity, and freedom that authoritarian alternatives couldn't provide. When Russia invaded Ukraine, NATO members coordinated military aid, economic sanctions, and diplomatic pressure through democratic consultation, not authoritarian decree. This cooperation proved more effective than Putin's isolated decision-making.
NATO proved that 12 democracies could accomplish what no dictatorship ever achieved: voluntary unity that strengthened rather than diminished individual freedom. The alliance succeeded because it emerged from democratic values, not authoritarian commands. Stalin's great miscalculation was believing that democratic nations were too divided, too contentious, and too individualistic to maintain lasting cooperation. NATO demonstrated the opposite. Democratic debate creates stronger partnerships than authoritarian decree. As we face modern authoritarian threats, NATO's founding principle remains vital. Democratic nations, united in defense of shared values, possess strength that no dictatorship can match.